Muhammad Ali had knocked out some of the most dangerous men alive. But when Tobin Bell looked him in the eye on a film set and said, "Go ahead, hit me," not knowing who he was talking to, the entire crew stopped breathing. What happened in the next 4 seconds became the most retold story on that set for the next 30 years. It was October 1977. The production was a mid-budget Hollywood drama, filming on location at a warehouse facility in Burbank, California, that had been converted into a working soundstage for the shoot. The film's producers had arranged for Muhammad Ali, who had been exploring opportunities in entertainment following his third heavyweight championship reign, to visit the set as part of a publicity arrangement that was common in that era. A famous face associated with a production, photographs taken, a brief appearance that benefited both parties. Ali had been on set since mid-morning. He was 35 years old, between fights, and in the kind of expansive good humor that characterized him when there was no immediate pressure on him, moving through the crew with the natural ease of a man who had spent his entire adult life being the most interesting person in any room he entered. He had learned the names of 3 grips, challenged the director of photography to a staring contest, and spent 20 minutes with the craft services team discussing the relative merits of different training diets. Tobin Bell had arrived on set that morning for a supporting role. He was 34 years old in 1977, working steadily in the kinds of parts that serious actors work in before the role that defines them arrives. Present, professional, attentive to the craft in the way that actors who will eventually matter tend to be attentive to it. He had come in from the parking lot, been walked through the setup by the second assistant director, and had been focused entirely on his scenes and his preparation. Nobody had told him about the visitor. The moment happened between takes in the way that most unrehearsed things happen on film sets, in the gap between the director calling cut and the crew resetting for the next setup. Bell was standing near the edge of the soundstage, running lines quietly to himself, when a large man appeared at the periphery of his vision and stopped nearby. Bell looked up. He saw a very large, very relaxed man in civilian clothes, standing with the easy posture of someone who belonged wherever he was. He did not recognize him immediately, which was not unusual. Film sets attract a continuous stream of visitors, producers, studio executives, and various people whose presence requires no immediate explanation. What happened next was the product of the particular loose energy that actors sometimes carry between takes, when they are in the middle of a character and the normal social filters are slightly down. Bell looked at the man, noted the size of him, and said what he later described as something between a joke and an actor's instinctive test of a stranger's energy. "Go ahead," Bell said, spreading his hands slightly. "Hit me." He was smiling when he said it. It was the kind of thing an actor says to another person on a film set when he is feeling the artificial courage of a production environment and wants to establish an easy rapport with someone he doesn't know. 17 members of the film crew heard it. The second assistant director, who was standing 4 feet away and had spent the previous 3 hours facilitating Muhammad Ali's visit, later said that what happened in his body in the half-second after those words left Bell's mouth was something he had never experienced before or since on a film set. Every function oriented toward keeping a production moving stopped simultaneously. His clipboard, which he had been holding for 6 hours without once being aware of its weight, suddenly felt like it was made of something else entirely. He was not alone. A camera operator who had been checking a lens mount put it down. A continuity supervisor who had been writing in her notebook stopped writing. A gaffer who had been 20 feet away and had heard the exchange turned and looked with the expression of a man who has just heard a sound he cannot immediately categorize, but knows instinctively is significant. The crew knew who was standing next to Tobin Bell. Tobin Bell did not. Ali looked at him. 4 seconds passed. The people who were present and who have described those 4 seconds over the years, in interviews, in memoirs, in the kind of stories that circulate for decades among people who were in a specific room at a specific moment, consistently describe them in terms that have nothing to do with danger and everything to do with something more interesting than danger. Ali's expression during those 4 seconds was not what anyone expected. It was not the expression of a man suppressing anger or calculating a response or deciding between options. It was the expression of a man who has just been handed something genuinely delightful, an unexpected gift in an ordinary afternoon, and was taking a moment to appreciate it fully before deciding what to do with it. He looked at Bell with the complete attention that everyone who had ever been looked at by Muhammad Ali described as the most unsettling form of eye contact they had ever experienced. Not threatening, not aggressive, simply total. The look of a man for whom the person in front of him was, in that moment, the only thing in the room worth examining. Bell later said that it was during those 4 seconds, before he had any idea who he was talking to, before the second assistant director had rushed over to explain, before the laughter of the crew had told him that something had happened that he didn't yet understand, that he felt something shift in the air between them. Something that he could not name and that he spent years afterward trying to describe accurately. It was like standing next to weather, Bell said in an interview 3 decades later. Not a storm, something bigger than a storm, the kind of thing that doesn't need to do anything to make you aware of exactly what it is. Then Ali smiled, the full Ali smile, the one that had been on the covers of magazines and had charmed television audiences and had preceded some of the most extraordinary athletic performances of the 20th century. He raised one hand, not a fist, an open hand, the hand of a man making a gentle and precise point, and held it approximately 6 inches from Bell's face. He did not move it toward him, he simply held it there, completely still, for 1 additional second. Then he lowered it. "That," Ali said quietly, "is what hit me costs." The crew, which had been holding a collective breath for the better part of 5 seconds, released it all at once in the form of laughter, the specific laughter of people who have been genuinely frightened and are now genuinely relieved, which is a different and more abandoned laughter than any other kind. Bell stood very still for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then the second assistant director appeared at his elbow and said, in the tone of a man choosing his words with the care of someone who has just survived something, "Tobin, this is Muhammad Ali." Bell looked at the man who had just held an open hand 6 inches from his face. He looked at the hand. He looked at Ali's face. He looked at the hand again. I know who he is." This was not true 30 seconds earlier. It was completely true now. What followed was something that nobody on that set had scheduled and that the production would later describe, in the way that productions describe unplanned delays, as a 40-minute interruption to filming. In practice, it was something considerably more valuable than what the filming would have produced in those 40 minutes. Ali sat with Bell in a pair of folding chairs at the edge of the soundstage, and they talked. About acting, about performance, about the specific and terrifying experience of doing your work in front of people who are watching you do it and cannot look away. Ali talked about the walk from the dressing room to the ring in a way that Bell later said was the most precise description of performance anxiety he had ever heard from anyone in any medium. "The walk is the longest part," Ali told him. "In the ring, you know what to do, your body knows. But the walk, that's when everything in you wants to turn around. That's when you find out who you actually are." Bell, who would spend the next several decades walking onto sets and stages and into roles that required him to inhabit darkness that most people prefer to look away from, listened to this with the attention of someone receiving information they will use for the rest of their career. The conversation ended when the director, who had been waiting with the patience of a man who understood that what was happening at the edge of his soundstage was not something you interrupted, finally indicated that the production needed to resume. Ali stood up, shook Bell's hand, and said one more thing before he walked away. Next time someone tells you to hit them, make sure you know who they are first.
Bell laughed. Everyone within earshot laughed. It was the kind of line that Ali produced with the ease of breathing, the perfect word at the perfect moment that landed so cleanly it seemed inevitable. Tobin Bell worked steadily in film and television for the next 26 years before a horror franchise made him one of the most recognized faces in the genre. In interviews over the decades, he was asked many times about memorable moments from his career, about the experiences that had shaped how he approached his work. He mentioned many things: directors who had changed how he thought about performance, roles that had required him to find something in himself he hadn't known was there, moments on set that had clarified something essential about what acting was actually for. And occasionally, when the interviewer was patient enough and the conversation went long enough, he mentioned an afternoon in Burbank in October 1977. A large man at the edge of a soundstage. 6 words spoken without knowing who was listening. 4 seconds. An open hand held very still 6 inches from his face. "The walk is the longest part," Bell would say, quoting something he had heard once and had not forgotten in 30 years. "That's when you find out who you actually are." He always said it without explaining where it came from. The people who knew the story understood. The people who didn't found it slightly mysterious, which was perhaps the point. Some lessons arrive on the day you are ready for them. Some arrive on a random Tuesday in a Burbank warehouse before you know you needed them, delivered by the most dangerous man on earth through an open hand held 6 inches from your face and a sentence about the walk to the ring. Tobin Bell never forgot the walk after that. Not to any set, not to any stage, not to any role that asked him to become something frightening for the benefit of an audience. He knew what the walk cost. A man with the fastest hands in the history of heavyweight boxing had shown him, on an afternoon when neither of them expected it, exactly how much it costs to step forward anyway. The crew who witnessed it remembered it for the rest of their careers, not because of its drama — the drama lasted 4 seconds — but because of what Ali had chosen to do with a situation that could have gone any number of other directions. He could have laughed it off. He could have ignored it. Instead, he had chosen to teach, to take 4 seconds and an open hand and a single sentence about the walk to the ring and give a younger man something he would carry for 30 years. That instinct was not something Ali had developed for film sets or for situations where it would be noticed. It was something he had always done, everywhere, with everyone. The craft services crew who had gotten the training diet conversation that morning had received the same quality of attention that Bell received at the edge of the soundstage. The grips whose names Ali had learned, all of them had been on the receiving end of an attention that did not distinguish between important and unimportant, between audiences worth performing for and people not worth the performance. Angelo Dundee once said that the most underrated thing about Muhammad Ali was that he never treated any person as background. Every person he encountered was foreground. Every conversation was the conversation. An open hand held still, 6 inches from a stranger's face. A sentence about the walk to the ring. An afternoon in a Burbank warehouse that neither man had planned, and both of them carried forward into everything that came after. The most dangerous man in the world had been asked to hit someone. He had chosen, instead, to show them something true. That choice, made in 4 seconds on a random Tuesday, with nothing at stake and no one paying attention, was Muhammad Ali being exactly who he was when nobody was watching.
which was, by every account of everyone who knew him well, the same person he was when everybody was. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever received a lesson from someone you didn't expect, in a moment you didn't plan for? Tell us in the comments below, and ring that notification bell for more stories about the humanity behind the greatest legends in history.